introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver. Welcome to Millionaire Smart. This is your coach, Lee Milteer, and our topic today is one that every single business owner and entrepreneur needs to be reminded of: the power of being a good sales closer. Now, we all know Dan Kennedy's teaching that we should not only think of ourselves as what we do in our business, but as marketers of that business. And that's all true. But let me share with you another truth. We're all in sales. And sadly, some people have developed amnesia about really what their business is about. You are not just a martial artist, school owner, or a tax consultant, or a lawyer, or a doctor, or a business owner of any kind or profession. You are foremost a salesperson. So everyone on your team and business either is helping you sell your product and service or is part of the sales prevention team. Now, if you're not paying attention to your sales daily, well, you're focusing on the wrong metrics. I have just finished 2 books, and I am very happy. I'm going to show you. And by the way, if you're not watching our video on our membership site, you don't get to see all this exciting stuff. But the 2 books that I have been reading are worthy of you investing in and reading and studying. One of them is Closers Part 1 and Closers Part 2. And the author is an amazing self-made success, and I want to introduce our expert and tell you about him. His name is Ben Gay III, and whose sales training materials, the Closer series and the Sales Closing Power books, are synonymous with the professional selling. Now, he has been a faculty member at the CEO Space, Mind Capture Group, LifeWorks University, and many others. He's worked with famous people such as, are you ready? Dr. Norman Hill, Dr. Napoleon Hill, in NASA astronauts, Zig Ziglar, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Ugg Mandino, Dr. Robert Schuller, W. Clement Stone, and Earl Nightingale are just a few of the huge names that you'll recognize. Now, Ben Gay, our guest, has helped train literally and indirectly millions of professional salespeople around the world. He's authored 12 books on the subjects of selling and living successfully, and he has shared his knowledge with literally millions of people in speeches, seminars, TV shows, radio appearances. And I just want to tell you, heads up, this information is literally transforming people, so it's important you know how much of a pleasure it is for us to have him today. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the living legend in the world of professional selling, Mr. Ben Gay. Say hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben. How are you? Thank you, Lee. That was well delivered. I was going to say, go on. Tell them more about me, my favorite subject.
Oh, well, Ben, your bio is so long that I was having to cut so much out today because I really wanted to interview you, but you are really quite the exceptional person. And one of the first questions I really had for you, because I like to jump right in your experience, what are some of the false beliefs about selling that hold people back from wanting to sell, and why are they so afraid of selling?
Fear of rejection is, to take your last question first, fear of rejection is, we can talk to human behavioral scientists and so on, and they can put it in Latin words. People don't like to be told no. They consider it a personal setback, a personal slap in the face, and they will go to great lengths not to experience that. It's also the reason that public speaking is allegedly the #1 psychological fear in the world, ahead of death by fire. If you're that's what they say. If you're afraid of talking to one person and hearing a no, you can imagine what it might be like to stand in front of 10,000 people and have them all not like you simultaneously. So that's really what it is, a fear of rejection that can be overcome with knowledge and scripting and so on, because most of the problems in selling go away with knowledge and practice. But unfortunately, most people never get that far. There are many people I meet every day. I was just at the eye doctor. I told you earlier I had cataract surgery on both eyes in the last week, most recently yesterday. And in that doctor's office, I met probably 10 people, including the doctor himself, who would be great in selling. And they sort of knew what I did. And somebody told them that outside of this little town, I'm not allowed to be well known here. That was a condition of marrying Gigi. But outside of this world, this little small town world, I'm reasonably well known, and somehow they heard about that. And I was saying, you'd be great in selling. Doctor, I know you're doing well, but I could show you how to make more money selling cars than you make here operating on eyes and so on. And to a person, thank you so much. They were just so flattered, but I couldn't do that. I would be so afraid, and I didn't press them, but afraid of what would be the next question. It's rejection. It always is. Knowledge, though, and practice will overcome that.
So one of the things that I have found in hiring people of late is that people are even afraid to talk on the phone. And yeah. I'm just stunned by that, because I'm always having to say to my staff, well, don't send an email. Pick up the phone and call. And they're like, oh no, I don't want to call anybody. And I'm like, but they get a million emails. We'll get all the answers we need immediately if you'll just call them. Right. So,
but they might say no, and they might hang up. So we're back to fear of rejection again.
So my father said no to almost everything I asked for as a kid. And my job was to figure out how to convince him to say yes to everything. So I grew up with this attitude, no meant nothing. And then I read books where it said no was the beginning of the sale. And so I was all excited about that. And as I mentioned to you after I read your books, which again, folks, here are the pictures of the books, excellent books. You got to get these books. I felt so excited about all the techniques and the psychology that you were sharing about sales. So jumping right in, because one of the things I loved about your book is in the book 1, you gave us a little bit of background about yourself. And then you said, from here on out, it's nothing but information about sales and how to be the best salesperson you can be. And I am a very direct, to the point, let's get to it kind of gal. So I really love that. So the next question I had for you is, and you talk about it in the Closers 1, is there's a difference between salespeople and closers. So let's talk about that first.
Well, and there's one beneath that, order takers.
Order takers. We're going to talk, yeah. So talk about that first, okay? Yeah. Order takers first.
Well, people think they're salespeople because people walk in with something in their hand, or walk up to them with something in their hand and they ring it up. And so that's selling. That's order taking. And there are many versions of that, some more sophisticated. It's still order taking. When I count the number of orders I take at the end of a day, I don't count anybody who call for me and or the company. I don't count anyone who called to buy a book, or 2 books. It only becomes a sale when they move up and hire me to be a coach or bring me in for a seminar or something like that, because I clearly understand the difference between order taking and salesperson. Salesperson is sort of an uneducated closer. Doesn't know yet and doesn't have the courage, because again, closing is only difficult because you're afraid they'll say no. And in the Closers series, in particular, the Closers Part 2 last chapter, Sales Infiltration. I'd show how people can get around that. I was not, when I joined I've been selling all my life. I won #1 on a bicycle selling Krispy Kreme donuts door to door when I was 10 or something. So I've always been involved in some little sales venture or whatever. But when Zig Ziglar and I joined a multi-level marketing company called Holiday Magic Cosmetics on the same day in the same meeting, Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, and they started teaching us things like the pencil drop, where you hold up the order pad in front of the prospect with the pen here, and then you let it go, and they'll pick up the pen, and so you win because the pen's in their hand. And even as young and stupid as I was, I thought, that doesn't make any sense. I'd hand the pen back to you. And then you grab them by the throat and wrestle them to the ground psychologically, of course, and grab their wallet. I wasn't raised that way. I'm a Southern gentleman from Atlanta, Georgia. If you tell me to get out of your house, I'm gone. Kirby Vacuum Cleaner, I do some work for them, I've got them talking about it less, but they used to say the sales presentation is not complete until you have payment in your hand or the police have been called. Well, that's not me. I had to figure out a way that a Southern gentleman could sell you without grabbing you by the throat, wrestling you to the ground. And that's what I call sales infiltration. And sales infiltration, and this is closing, is what we're talking about now. I set it up in advance. My closing rate, Lee, is 86%, as best we can tell, as long as I've been selling.
That's amazing.
Some of it's estimated. Yeah. But it's not really amazing when you figure out that I don't I do some trial closing. Natural conversation is trial closing, but I don't go, do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? You want to buy? You want to buy? I'm more like a sniper up in a tree. I wait till everything is the way I want it. And when I squeeze the trigger, I hit my target. That's what I'm paid to do. So with sales infiltration, I get that stuff out of the way up front. I lay the groundwork. If you want, Mr. Prospect, if you want the razzle dazzle thing and so on, I know people in the business. I know people in the company I can send out here and they can do all that for you. Here's what I'll do. I'll treat you fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules. Here's the way I operate. I'll be straight with you and you be straight with me. That means when we get to the end, if I think the product will fit you or service, if I think the product or service will fit you and I ask you to acquire it, it's because I know it's right for you. And if it's not, I won't tell you. I'll tell you to pass. And I do that frequently. On the other hand, on the straight basis, I don't want you to tell me that you have to check with your brother-in-law in Cleveland, who's an accountant, because you and I know he's not an accountant and you don't have a brother-in-law in Cleveland.
Exactly.
So is that okay? Fair enough? And they agree. So I lay down all the stupid things they can do up front, and we agree that they're not going to do them. So again, when I circle back around and use my magic close on them, we'll get this out of the way up front and maybe repeat it later, but it is a magic close. After I've done the work to get in line, to get my sights on you, after I've earned the right to expect a positive answer, then and only then do I say, Lee, based on what we've discussed, and or here's a slight variation, depends on how the conversation went. Lee, based on what you've told me, here's what I recommend we do. We is very important. Here's what I recommend we do. Fill in the blank. Get the car, don't get the car, get this one, blah, blah, blah. Fair enough? And 86% of the time they say yes. I could probably back it up and say 82% of the time they say yes. The other 4%, they might say, well, I do have one more question. It smokes out the one more question. And so when I say I have an 86% closing rate, count the bullets that I use to get the 86% closing rate, and you'll find I use less than 100 shot grand total all day, all month, all year in my career, versus the guy with a machine gun who comes back without a bird or whatever and says, I don't know what went wrong. Well, what went wrong was you didn't know what you were doing.
Well, one of the things I loved about your book, and I have to show this, it says, warning, this material is not for the beginner or the novice. It is specifically intended for the sales professional only. And there's some chapters and phrases and things in this book that I could see if like what I call civilians, people who are not entrepreneurs, they're not, I'm kind of famous for this little civilian thing. We're not civilians. We've been around the block. We do this. They would like choke on some of your strategy because they feel like it's pure manipulation. But I don't think what they realize is everything in the universe is illusion almost. And you have to just be smart because you get this one shot at it. So continue, because you were going so well. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you very much. Let's jump on to the word manipulation. I was doing a seminar one day, and at the back of the room were several of my top people at the time in that company. And one of them, Scott Wentworth, had just been awarded another car. He got where we had to make up new prizes for him. He didn't have enough room in his driveway to park the Cadillac and the Lincoln and the
I like
Corvette.
this guy. I don't know who he is, but I
Yeah,
like him.
yeah, he was great salesman, but he was a young kid. And one of the people in this training, it was called Advanced Business Training, said, "Mr. Gay, do you feel that you manipulate Scott?" And before I could answer, he said, "Let me answer that." And he stood up. He said, "When I met Mr. Gay, I was making $100 a week, and I was spending it at the payphone with my bookie, who was taking all my money because I wasn't a very good bettor. Then I met Mr. Gay last year, and this is 30 some odd years ago. Last year, I made $360,000. I won 4 cars. I've been to Hawaii. I've been here, there, and so on. And now they're having to make up things for me to win." And he said, "So if Mr. Gay is manipulating me," and he turned to me, he said, "Mr. Gay, manipulate me some more."
I
So,
love that story. That's great.
yeah. So, but his point, what, if your heart's in the right place, using psychological techniques to get someone in the right place so they can take advantage of what you're doing is fine with me. Now, the way I describe the closers part 1, which is what you're referring to when you say they would choke, the closers part 1 is the red raw meat of selling, the kicks, the blocks, and the punches, the way selling really is beneath the surface, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. In the closers part 2, I show you what sophisticated people really do with that information. Cary Grant said the secret of acting was not to get caught at it. That's also the secret of professional selling. You use all the techniques and manipulative, and I don't really like that word, but since you brought it up and it's effective, you use all the manipulative things you can do, so long as your heart's in the right place, so long as you're selling a quality product or service that's competitively priced and you're talking to the right people. Then being manipulated, as Scott said, please manipulate me some more. So we show you there what sophisticated people really do with that information. So it's a 2-book set. Closers Part 2 is the better book, but it's the better book only if you've read Part 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see that. One of the things that I do with my own staff, because I realize that often they're afraid, as you said, is I try to explain to them that, perceive themselves as just good educators, and that we're just educating people on the products that we have, and that we want to match their needs with our products. And if we don't, then we're not the right product for them. And that seems to give them a little bit of confidence when I say, don't think of yourself as a salesperson. Think of it's Lee Milteer, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books, and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com. Yourself as an educator. But now remember, they're really order takers, my staff, because they're either on the phone or answering an email or something that like that. They're not on stage like me, doing platform sales and, dealing with large groups and everything that can go wrong in an audience at the same time. So I don't
I've
consider
got some
myself.
stories I can tell you about that.
I'm sure you do. So I think I have a lot of questions. The next one I had was about order takers, and you already answered that. So you've mentioned the word magic. One of my last book was called Reclaim the Magic, and so I'm very big in. I love the word magic because I do believe that good salespeople, good presenters have a charisma, an energy, a magic about them that helps them achieve what they want. So let's talk about that.
Well, if we're talking about the magic a person has, it goes back. I tell people when I start a seminar, I say this is either going to be one of the most amazing days in your life, or you're going to be bored to tears because you're going to say, well, I've heard all that before. Set goals, the eyes roll back in the head, but there's a way to set them. And there's a way to develop this and that and so on. So what I did with the magic was I watched people who had it. I was elected wittiest in my senior year in high school, which is one of the reasons I barely graduated, because I was the wittiest. That can work for you and against you, as you know. But I started trailing around people, Zig among them, your good friend Zig Ziglar and mine, trailing around to see what he did to get the magic. Why, like, you remind me of Bob Hope. A lot of your viewers won't know that, but Bob Hope, one of the great comedians of all time, his theme song was Thanks for the Memories.
Yes.
And when he was announced and walked on stage and they started playing Thanks for the Memories, the audience cracked up, laughed, and cheered. He had conditioned them that I'm Bob Hope and I'm funny and you're in for a special time. So your reputation precedes you. But I studied the people that had the magic. Og Mandino had it. Reverend Bob Schuller had it. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale had it. Zig had it. And Dr. Napoleon Hill didn't have the magic on stage, but he had the magic with a pen and paper.
Yeah, I agree.
He could put it down. So I just studied him and watched him and found out what was natural for me. And then I was having breakfast one morning with Wade Cannon. He was vice president of the Wilson Learning Corporation, human behavioral scientist, one of the smartest people I've ever met, and Ray Considine, one of the great speakers and copywriters of our time. We were having breakfast one morning. And Wade said, about that story you told last night, or maybe it was that more, I don't know. I had just told it. He said, that was my story. He said, in fact, I only told it to you for the first time a day or two ago. And I said, yeah, I really liked it. And he said, well, let me explain to you how this works. When you steal a story from me, A, make sure it's at a seminar where we're not both appearing. Dan Kennedy and I ran into that once at a seminar we were doing in Atlanta, where I happened to be at the back of the room talking to someone, but I heard a couple of things he said, and I to myself said, take that one out, take that one out.
That one out.
Yeah, I can't use that one. So anyway, Wade said, when I told the story, he said, first of all, you told it a little wrong, but that's okay. We can talk about that later. The first time you steal a story from me, after you make sure I'm not there, you say, as Wade Cannon says. The second time you steal it, you may say, as someone once said. And the third time only, you may begin saying, as I've always said. And I said, that's a good idea. He said, it's a good idea, but you didn't do it. So when you're borrowing the magic from people and studying what they do, if I was going into show business, I would lock myself in a room and watch Michael Jackson tapes for 24 hours. Then I'd watch Garth Brooks tapes and his wife, Trisha Yearwood, I think is her name. I saw a concert they did recently. It was absolutely, if I was going to be an entertainer, that's what I want to do, as close as I can get to it without looking silly. So study the ones that have it. Sam Goldwyn, the great producer, movie studio owner, said, "I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it."
See it.
So you can't watch Zig and just write things down, but you can watch Zig until you feel it. And then in my case, I had to sort of de-Southernize it. I'm from the South, but I'm not that South. De-South it a bit and put it in my words. But I learned, I still do things to this day where when I'm saying it or doing it or making a gesture, I think, thank you, Zig, appreciate that. I remember where I got it. So study the magic and do it over and over and over again, and listen to your own presentations, whether it's a talk or a one-on-one presentation. Listen to what you're saying and watch the reaction. Hal Holbrook, the great actor who did Mark, I think he may still be out doing it, but I haven't heard his name in a while, doing Mark Twain. He memorized 9 hours of Mark Twain material verbatim.
Wow.
And he uses that material in every show. He says he's never done the same show twice. Here's why. He goes on stage and he uses a story that is typical Mark Twain, very, and short, and he tells that story based on the reaction to that story, reaction to it, which he's listening to and watching. He reaches back into the vault. I always do it like an old jukebox where you go back and get the next record and put it down. He reaches into the vault and gets the next story based on what they just did, because he listened and watched. My little trick, very few people have this advantage, is I walk on. My introduction has been read. Usually, if they did it right, they read it. It usually causes a standing ovation. And just as they're sitting back down, I say, let's get this Bengay thing out of the way, because everybody's thinking about the funny name that I have. And I listen to their reaction. If they roar, I've got them. I can put my hands in my pocket and just go, well, folks, if they mildly chuckle, I think I got work to do. Better reach into the vault and get the A material and get to this quickly. But that's learning how to have the magic. I didn't have it when I started. Some argue I don't have it now, but I think I do.
Definitely you do.
And it pays off so much more than just in sales presentations and so on. As I told you, I just returned from the doctor this morning having the post-op checkout. And when I walked in, the nurses and the staff, and Mr. Gay, how are you? And the ones who had talked to me a few times, Ben, welcome back. And Dr. Evans told me, he said, the staff is saying they hope I can find something else wrong with you because they like having you in here. Well, that's not accidental. I'm sincerely fun to be around sometimes and really like people and so on. But I know what I'm doing, because when I go in, I like to be moved to the head of the line, move back, see the doctor first, or get the best service in a restaurant or what have you. It's a skill, and you have to practice the skill. Now, people used to go up to me, how can I be like you? Or how can I be like Zig Ziglar or whatever? And I said, you can't be like Zig Ziglar. He's a 1 in a million personality. He came out of his mother's womb laughing, giggling, and telling stories. You can't do that. But you can pick up those parts of him that you can do. You can pick up the parts of me that you can do, and you can build something much better than any other. People say, I'd like to be like Tony Robbins. I said, well, you need growth hormone, and you need to have a piano keyboard set in your mouth. And, that'll be a start. When you get that done, call me. And then I'll get you some Jim Rohn tapes, which is where 90% of that material came from. So there are certain things you just can't do, but you can be the very, very, very best you. And it's a skill. When I go out of the house in the morning, Lee, this is not an exaggeration. When I open the door, if I'm in town, when I open the door, if it's in a hotel, it's when I go out in the hallway. I say to myself, if Gigi's with me, I say it out loud. It's showtime. It's time to be Ben Gay, the one they paid to come see. And I know what that is, and I know how to do it. Roy Rogers lived in Apple Valley, California. My dad sold him his big ranch when we lived in Apple Valley, and Dad was in real estate briefly. One day, Roy's sitting in his house, and he had the museum there, the Roy Rogers Museum, and he's in a golf cap, tennis shoes, and so on. He was an outboard motor racer. That was his real love. But no one knew that unless you were racing against him or saw him at the lake. And in the middle of a conversation, he said to a person who was with him, he said, "Excuse me, it's time to go be old Roy." And he went down the hallway, and he came back as Roy Rogers. Hat, guns, spangly shirt, hand-hammered leather belt, cowboy. And the guy said, it was like I was talking to a whole different person. I've heard Cher say the same thing, heard about Cher saying the same thing. It's time to go be Cher. That's not her normal personality, I assume. It's a learned skill. And if you're missing it, get to work.
Well, you say in your book, to be a great salesperson, you actually have to be a great actor. And that certainly, fills in with what you're talking about. So other than you just open the door and say, hey, it's showtime. So let's talk about some of those maybe rituals or habits that you have that keep you in that state of mind that would help our listeners. Because, people are so swayed by political BS right now and just the insanity of the world. I mean, it's like we're all living in the twilight zone. But I mean, I think that people are actually taking life so seriously. One of the things I'm getting from you, Ben, is you like to have fun.
Yes.
And I'm sure that shows in all your presentations, and particularly, selling presentations. But people are not having fun. So what is it they could do to sort of get themselves more in a sales frame of mind and have fun?
Lighten up, take a deep breath, realize this isn't cancer research. You're not going to change. People say, I'm going to go change the world. And I think, oh, you young idiot.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. Better people than you have tried to change the world. It ain't going to happen. Just lighten up, and nothing is a big deal. Don't sweat there was a book out, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. It's all small stuff, and so on. It is this morning. I'm in the doctor's office in one of those many rooms they put you in to wait to go to the next room. You're going to wait in before you go to the next room. And in one of them, she asked me a question, and I said, are you aware I had my left eye done yesterday, my right eye a week ago? And she said, oh, I'm not sure. And I said, it's sort of good that we get that figured out now, because I don't want to have my left eye operated on again. So let's dope it out. Well, she was horrified and embarrassed. And I reached over and I touched her hand, as only we older people can do. And I said, honey, it's not a big deal. It's a typo. Somebody, when they entered my information, hit the wrong button and it went to the wrong place. It's not a big deal. It's a typo. She said, well, this is going to take a few minutes. I said, I've waited 77 years for this moment. I can go another 5 or 10 minutes. And she started laughing.
Right.
And when I left the room, we hugged each other. That's putting the magic on it, but it's being deliberate. And what I'm doing when I'm doing that, Lee, is I'm greasing the skids. I touched on it earlier. I like good service. When I call a restaurant, one of our local restaurants here in town that's upscale for Placerville, upscale, where I take Gigi for Valentine's and so on, so her birthday. And when I called a couple of weeks ago and I said, hi, this is Ben Gay. And they said, been waiting for your call. And I said, well, I didn't know I was supposed to call. And I said, certainly. Valentine's is coming up in a couple of weeks, and you want table 27, and you want it at 4 o'clock so you can be in and out before the rush. I said, why did I have to call? He said, well, it's a formality we like to go through. But I bet you there aren't 3 other people in Placerville who they know, their favorite table, what time they're going to show up, and so on. But see, I don't leave it to chance. When I showed up at the doctor's office this morning, we were there 10 minutes early, and I said loud enough for the whole lobby to hear, I have good news for you. Ben Gay's here, and let's all make notes so I get credit. I'm 10 minutes early. And I said, write that down. And so she pretended like she was writing it down. I said, good. Instead of waiting the 10 or 15 minutes past my time, I was called in 4 minutes before my time. That's not accidental.
Exactly.
So you grease the skids everywhere you go as you go. It is show business. And you were talking about acting. Sometimes there can be a negative connotation put on that. People say, well, you know, I don't believe in scripting. Now, really? Do you watch television? Do you go to the movies? You know, it's all scripted. They either memorize it or they're reading off a teleprompter. Why would you go into the world and throw the confetti up in the air and hope it all lands back in the basket? It won't. What you do is you plot it in advance so that it works well. I have a dear friend who I won't name because she'll probably watch this someday, who goes, she's a very bright lady, has run several of my businesses, but she goes bumping through life from one problem, setback, insult to another. She's a nice person, but all these things, it reminds me of Jim Rohn. Some guy came up to him in a seminar allegedly and said, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. Why do things like that always happen to me? And Jim said, I don't know, but I think things like that always happen to people like you. And it's true. Yeah. And Gigi calls it, because her life got a little bit better when we got together 23 years ago. Gigi calls it, stole it from me, but that's okay, that we glide through life. You know, when the car's supposed to pull up, it does, because I didn't call it 5 minutes ago. I called it 5 hours ago. When we walk into the Independent Friday night at 4 o'clock, Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we'll be there about 10 minutes early. The table will be set up with her flowers on it and a card on it, not because I waited till the day before, called to find out they don't have any tables left. You lay out the highway, you smooth it out. I liken it to sanding a board. If you have a board and you run your hand over and it's fresh cut, you'll get splinters. So your job is to sand it and then test it. And you'll get a splinter or two and fine sand it till finally the top of the board is like glass. That's the way I like to operate my sales life, my personal life, my business life. I want it to go smoothly, but that requires prior planning.
So I love all that, because I believe that is very true. And I'm a big believer in scripting, because I believe that once you set your mind on something, that your focus is on that and you attract those circumstances to you,
Sure.
Or you make the circumstances for you. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was on page 11 in your book was the characteristic of sales. But what we really want to talk about is that you say the basic percentage of a closer's makeup are: number one, enthusiasm, 51%. We're on page 11. Number two, empathy and understanding is 25%. Number three, manners and charm, 10%. I honest to God don't believe that most people in sales would ever think about charm and how important it is. And then, and nobody has this in their sales books, number four, 7% has to be fun. And then the shocker that most people aren't aware of is product knowledge, 7%.
And that's high.
And that's high.
Yeah.
And one of the objections I get from people, I'm trying to sometimes say, hey, you know, you're really, like, I had this assistant one time and she was the most persuasive thing possible. And I kept saying to her, you're like perfect for sales. But she was so terrified, oh, God, I don't know the product enough. And I'm like, but you don't seem to understand. And I didn't have your numbers exactly. I said, but when I was first getting started in sales, I worked for a radio station that had absolutely 0 ratings. And I was the number one salesperson because I had so much enthusiasm about how radio sales would change their business. They caught it. They caught the energy.
Yep.
So let's talk about the characteristics of closers, because, I mean, you clearly have them all. And one of the words that you said somewhere in the book that I've written in my notes is romancing. And I just fell in love with that. You're romancing your clients or prospective clients.
Yeah. It's not unlike a date where, for I can't speak from a woman's side, but from a man's side, uh, there's a thing that we're sort of interested in and are willing to do the romancing necessary to get there as quickly as humanly possible. And part of that is charm and this and that and so on, but it's a process. Some are good at it, some are not good at it. It's a process that you go through. You touched on earlier that you like scripting. Most people say, I don't like scripting. I would never be scripted. And I said, well, if you've been selling more than 30 days, you are scripted. You're saying the same thing over and over again now. So the question is it a good script or one that
Yes.
you drifted into through laziness and slothfulness and ignorance? You're all scripted. I promise you, if I followed you around with a tape recorder, we could play the recordings over each other. It would sound like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So we're all scripted. In the romancing thing, again, I'm talking to you. Let's say you're a customer or prospect. I'm talking to you. There's something I want from you, something I'm willing to give in exchange for it. And I want to make sure you understand it in the most pleasant, pleasing manner you possibly can. And sometimes that can be, and I don't mean this in a sexual way, but it can be flirting. It can be kidding. It can be, I normally flirt and kid with other people, but with you, I want to be dead serious, which is also flirting and kidding, putting a different hat on it. But it's just be aware of your in the closers part one, there's the personality profiles. If they're a scientist, they're this. If they're a fireman, they're this, and so on. And they're
Yes, that
reasonably,
was very interesting, by the way.
yeah, and they're reasonably accurate. But here's what I'm really trying to teach there: people are different. When you sit down in front of somebody, you don't give the fireman the same script that you just gave to the psychologist. They talk differently. The process is the same, but they talk differently. So I don't care if you read what you're supposed to say to a psychologist in the book or not. What I do care about is I'm now sitting down, I'm in a new situation with a new person. As best I can tell, and frequently you're wrong, I'm 77, somebody might treat me as a senior citizen. I'm about 21 mentally. You know, I still want to go drink beer and drive around town and yell at people. I don't, but I want to. So Gigi said to somebody the other day, they said, he kids so much and everything. How do I know when he's kidding? She said, when his lips are moving is number one. And then it was, I lost my train of thought, but they said, well, when is he going to grow up? And Gigi said, Ben and men don't grow up. They get taller. And she, she said, once I figured that out, it was easy to work with. So it's just, when I say it at the beginning of a seminar, this is either going to be a mind-opening thing for you or the dullest day of your life. It's what you're ready. The Bible somewhere in it says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I'm here from time to time on webinars and in speeches and so on to tell you it's so easy if you'll just relax. They say, I don't know how to really work with people. I said, have you ever been to a wedding? Yeah. And I said, okay, skip the reception afterwards. You might have gotten out of line there, but in the wedding, meeting the groom's mother and the bride's mother and so on, and the bride, how did you conduct yourself? Well, I was a perfect gentleman. Bingo. Have you ever been to a funeral? Yes. How did you treat the family, the widow or the widower, as the case may be? How did you treat them? Well, kindly and gently, and I had empathy and everything. Bingo. You can do that selling a car. You just have to understand to be on your best behavior and use what you know works. And even if you're acting in the beginning, Mary Kay, who used to work for us years ago, briefly, before she went off and started her own big deal, Mary Kay said, fake it till you make it. Well, people take that as maybe jewelry you can't afford or what have you, but she was also talking about the I am concept. I am successful. I am walking like a successful person. I am this, I am this, all the good qualities you're looking for. And when you do that for a while, it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it becomes you.
You're singing my tune. Totally love that. So, Ben, one of the things that I get hired to do occasionally is go sit in an audience and help a person who's never, been a platform salesperson, improve their presentations. And one of the things I notice is that as long as they're giving their speech that they feel comfortable with, their body language and everything is congruent. But the second they have to go into sales, I mean, their whole body sort of collapses and shuts down. They stop smiling. Their personality comes to an end. Their shoulders are up here. It's like they're having a horrible doctor's exam. And I'm always saying, if you're not having fun doing this and using your personality and showing people with your own body language that you're into this. I mean, people read body language much more than they read or listen to what you say.
Yep.
And so I think you've been very beneficial helping people relax a little bit. But I have sat through a lot of presentations where I'm like, oh, kill me now, because
how long did they say this was going to last?
Going to last. And I mean, the notes for you, honey, are going to be extremely long, like get another job. But unless you can really embrace this thing of sales are good. So before we end today, let's really talk about the business owner and the challenges that they have with getting their staff to actually sell. I mean, let's say they're not just order takers. Let's say we got real salespeople. They're supposed to be on the street and they're supposed to be doing things. Sadly, I've noticed in a lot of my personal clients, when I ask them how your salespeople are doing, they're sort of, well, the sales manager's taking care of that. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is your business. And if you're not really proactive and paying attention to the data every day about what your sales are, I mean, this can get away from you very quickly. So what is some advice you want to give business owners about looking at their salespeople, talking to their salespeople?
Well, teach them what you just said. You just said something that made my head go ding. My father taught me years and years ago when I first started edging into the corporate world. I said one day I worked for Macy's. It was Davison's in Atlanta back then, but it was owned by Macy's. So, I'm going to work for Macy's. And he said, no, you're not. You're taking Ben Gay Incorporated into the Macy's building. They're going to provide you with customers, product, pay the rent, and a 6-story building downtown on Peachtree Street. That's their contribution to park your business in. And it took me a little while. I like to go, I went, wow, and my life changed. But the more I thought about it and the more he beat it into my head, the more I understood. No matter where I'm going, if I work for your company, somebody else's company, I'm Ben Gay III Incorporated. And you just provide me some stuff. If I'm selling cars, you spent millions of dollars building a building, renting 20 acres, staffing it and stocking it and so on. And into it comes Ben Gay III, and he sits down at a desk and runs his little business. And I thank you so much for providing all this. Now, back to your other question, how do you get them to do it? I'm sort of a mix between, and in a moment I'll tear my mask off, I'm sort of a mix between inspiration and humor. And if we can all have a good time and all do our jobs, fantastic. If that becomes a problem, I'm a benevolent dictator. When I told you to do this, it wasn't a suggestion, it was a job requirement. And you will do it inspired, motivated, or not. And if you're not inspired, motivated enough to fake it, then you're gone. And let me give you a date on which you will be gone. When I joined Holiday Magic, we put up in today's money $50,000, which was exactly $50,000 more than I had. So we got in the business, and 6 months went by. I didn't make a penny. Zig started making money pretty quick. I didn't make a penny. And one day I walked into the Georgian Terrace Hotel on Peachtree Street in Ponce de Leon, you know the area, where we had our meetings. And Bill Dempsey, my sponsor, greeted me at the door, and he said, "Ben, good to see you tonight." And I said, "Hi, how are you?" He said, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "About what?" And he said, "I don't want you coming to the meetings anymore." And I said, "What?" Because the only way to run the business was to come to the meetings. And so I said, "Well, let me tell you why." The first day we met, I gave you a copy of Think and Grow Rich and a record, an old beat up record of The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you read or listened to either one of them, but whatever. And then I gave you a bunch of scripts, you may remember. One was how to invite somebody to a meeting. Two was how to give the meeting. I haven't trusted you with that yet. And the third one was what to say after the meeting, and then what to say in the post-selling concept. He said, "If I just picked one at random, could you give it to me?" I said, "No." "Why not?" "Well, I haven't really read them. I've just been sort of watching." He said, "Well, that's the reason I don't want you coming to the meetings anymore. So you're here 5 or 6 nights a week, but you don't bring anybody. That bothers people. But they see you here every night. So at the conclusion of the meeting, when the film says, turn to the person who brought you here and ask how you can get started in holiday magic. If they have trouble with their prospects, they raise their hand, which means will a more experienced person come over and help. And they look at you, they see you here every night, they assume you're making money like some of us are, and you go over and blow off all their prospects because you don't know the closing scripts. So you're beginning to depress people. I'd never heard Ben Gay and depressed in the same sentence in my life. You know, I said, "Depressed?" He said, "Yeah." "So I appreciate you coming tonight. Don't want you coming back." I said, "Well, that's not one of my several options. How can I get back in your good graces?" He said, "Let me give you new copies of the same script I gave you 6 months ago." And he gave me new copies. He said, "When you can stand in front of my desk and do these verbatim," he didn't mean thought for thought, verbatim, word for word, "I will let you come back to the meetings." So a week, 10 days later, I did, and I passed. And he said, "Now take that, how you invite someone to a meeting script, and go out and say it to some people." A night or two later, I walked in with 5 prospects, the first 5 I had ever brought to a meeting. They ran the meeting. They didn't trust me with that yet. Turned to the person who brought you here. Lights came back up. I got out my yellow pad, started drawing circles by the script. Which position best suits your needs was one of the closing statements. And all 5, took a few minutes, but all 5 bought in at the $5,000 level. I made more money in about 10 minutes than I had made in any year in my life, because Bill Dempsey took it from the suggestion box and put it into the do it like I told you or go away box. Now, some people do well with suggestions, motivation, and so on, but when your people, and those they're not worried about, I'm sure, those that don't need to have a come to Jesus meeting.
You and I are so on the same page. I'm thank you for saying that, because it's almost our culture is almost one of we're working for them, and everybody's afraid to say anything. And I'm like, I'm just the opposite. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going to say anything I want to. This is my business. I'm signing the checks.
I was to say, if I'm signing the checks,
Check.
I tell you what the script is.
Yes, and I mean, the reason I do what I do is because, you know, I'm really a straight shooter, and let's talk about profits, and we want everybody to benefit from this. But if we can't get our salespeople to be on board with us, and when I introduced you, I jokingly said something about people are either on board or they're part of the sales prevention program.
Yep.
And a lot of people aren't mystery shopping. They're people answering the phone, or they're not having people mystery shop and do a sales call and things like that. So the owners really don't know why the sales are off, because you may have the secret person who thinks sales bad in your environment, who's actually saying, hey, you can get this down the street so much cheaper. And I've actually been in stores where people have said this to me. And
happened to my brother-in-law this week at Home Depot. They send him to Amazon.
Oh my Lord. Yes, yes. And so when this happens for me, I actually ask for the owner's name or the top manager, and I actually call them and say, hey, this person is your sales prevention person. And did you know that? And sometimes that's received great and sometimes not, because if that manager doesn't receive it great, they're part of the sales problem too. So all of you business owners, I think the point that we're trying to make is you can't just delegate your sales. You have got to be really part of it and inspirational, like Ben is, and have more fun, and really be an example to people. We can't just dictate to them. We have to actually be an example of that. So Ben, I know I could talk to you forever, but we unfortunately don't have the time to do that. But I want to share with everybody again. By the way, Ben, can people get this on Amazon? The Closers Part 1 and the Closers Part 2?
Let me tell you a better place. Yes, but let me tell you a better place that's less expensive.
All righty.
Get out your pens. Lower special pricing, I guess the best way to phrase it, and free shipping, which Amazon doesn't offer on our stuff, nor do I at my own website. Go to stores, stores.ebay.com/ this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONE books, BOOKS. I repeat, all one word. There you get the entire line's available. You can get 1, 2, 3, all of them with special pricing and free shipping. And I'm frequently asked, how is that possible? Well, my wife, whose maiden name is Ronzoni, sells on eBay, and she said one day, can I sell some of your books? And in addition to, she sells jewelry and stuff. I said, sure. And up it popped, and I said, all right. And then she started getting orders, and I said, good for you. And then I checked the pricing. It was less than mine. And she was feeding her shipments into my shipping department, where they went out. I have to pay, but she didn't. And I said, honey, in front of her, in front of some people in the warehouse one day, I said, this isn't fair. And one of the guys who knows us and worked with us for years said, Mr. Gay, it's worse than that. She steals the books.
I like your wife.
Yeah, she's a good woman. I said, well, stop her. He said, why don't you try and stop her? So she just comes in, gets what she needs, takes it over, does whatever she does, and takes them to the shipping department. We ship them out. He said, it's a good deal.
Definitely. It's a good deal for everyone. And I will, in my reports this month, which will be on our membership site, I will spell all that out for them so that they can actually just click a live link for that. How about that?
Sure.
All right, Ben, I really want to thank you so much for being with us, and to ask you, the last thing I'd like to ask you is what, at the end, what lasting piece of advice would you like everyone to remember you with?
You don't have to remember me with it, but things like this are always sprung on me. One day, not too long ago, in a seminar in Las Vegas, somebody said, what are the 3 things? They knew that Dr. Hill was my personal mentor the last 2.5 years of his life. What were the 3 things that you think were most, that he taught you the most? Well, I wasn't ready with 3 things. You can imagine, Lee, you think, come on, brain. But I just let my mouth run. It was integrity. He hammered on that all the time. So did my father, but sometimes you don't listen to your father as much as you do somebody years later. Integrity, focus, and action. Those were the 3 things that when I think of Dr. Hill pop to my mind first. Integrity, focus, action. And you get those 3 things under control, you got a real leg up.
So in conclusion today, folks, and we're going to wrap it up, but integrity, focus, and action is what we should be doing every day, and go sell something. So thank you very much. I hope to have you back very soon. This has been delightful. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I wish our time was a lot longer, but this is me calling it a wrap. See you next month. This is Lee Milteer, Millionaire Smarts. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lee.